couple blocks between just Woodlawn, where Emerson School is, and Beverly. Go down just
That's right, even water's not good for
all the way through.
Kale's good for you, right?
It is not for Newark.
Now you
I'm
one
on
of
my
those.
Hawthorne grade school, just north of Franklin, I'm up there, so. Yeah, so my son and his family live right over here in Washington, just south of the railroad track, so.
No, I wouldn't.
But my house to his is about a mile.
I wanna go too.
And his house to Wilson's is about a mile.
Oh, God.
So, yeah,
That's awesome.
it is, it is. My grandson is that close to my granddaughter, it's like heaven. And he is just.
Make that a little bigger.
He's already going, my son cousin was a teenager.
I didn't do anything else. I just made
I
a
think we said that that size.
Well, here he is being a stinker, making faces at me because he's all boy. He decided.
Hard for us to look at each other.
Contact.
The funny part is,
Yeah, right, yeah. I will.
this is the one. Saying,
Sometimes it's good, like I
or maybe I just got.
You always start off.
Mason's all in my brain, it goes to daycare. Mason goes to daycare. I can usually make it until 8. His mom's a social worker. And then I go back.
Mary Lou. Track it down.
I thought it was always in here.
We need, she needs a mission vision.
You may have taken it down for a few convenient here.
The mission
Oh,
banner?
did you really find healer? If we can do it quickly, fine, if not.
Thanks, I also have some printouts of, like, some glossies of it too, if you want that to
Well,
refer
I mean, we
to.
usually have it for
I
every
have
board
one on my
meeting.
desk. Yeah, and I have a bunch of glossies, so if you want to hang it on my desk. Yeah, like what Jim's got. Do you want me to go get them?
She's gonna go on.
Oh.
Well, if you can get the banner quickly, the banners.
I'm gonna email JR.
Okay, just create it, okay, but now I want to send it home. Because I'm trying to. Oh, never mind. It's still the last time. Oh, hello.
I'm the person that jumps my alarm clock like 5 times and then I wake up, he's down. He's downstairs looking for it, John.
I didn't even notice the other gym.
To make sure that this is good ones.
Well, I know it's with the kids, so it's always downstairs with the, or at Woodland, I'm hoping it's here, not at Woodland. Okay. I just have never been in here when it hasn't been.
Well, it's not here during the week, but you wouldn't be looking for it either.
Some people sign up just.
I'm gonna be for Jackie, so. Copy, go ahead. Thank you. You bet.
Clever thinking.
You started, remodel or addition?
He was off to the right.
Yeah, you're by the flag, if you do it, or in that corner, whatever. Thank you.
Sure, you're right there, that's perfect.
Yeah. Pledge allegiance to the banner. Thank you.
Thanks for finding the one track.
Okay, this meeting will now come to order. Mrs. Kanopoulos, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Sender, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Kykiel? Here. Mr. Gambiani?
Here.
Mr. Matheson?
Here.
Mr. Paulson?
Here.
Mrs. Swanson is absent this evening. Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mrs. Intihar?
Here. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is discussion of the board goals. So may I have a motion to suspend the rules and go into kind of workshop mode? Moved by Mrs. Coghill,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Roman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, so our primary focus tonight is discuss board goals, obviously including the Engage 200 final report. And when we have the goals in place, then we'll make some committee assignments based on the need for committees within those goals. So that being said, Dr. Schuler has put together some ideas for us in a document entitled Vision 2018. And I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at it, but perhaps we can start our discussion on goals by reviewing this with him and with other members of the staff who are present here tonight, and make the connection between this kind of 4-year vision and the goals that we would like to set tonight as a board. So, Dr. Schuler?
Absolutely. I'm going to use this mic.
Yeah.
I need to chat. So just a couple of comments here as we start the discussion tonight, and I do want to ask and welcome members of the senior leadership team through the discussion tonight to feel free to join into this discussion, because really the development of this Vision 2018 document was a collaborative effort, both of the senior leadership team as well as the full administrative team. And really the origin of where it came from, you might remember, I think at the last meeting there were a number of papers plastered on the wall behind me, and really what the papers represent that I didn't put back up on the wall, but I have a copy of tonight in the stack, is these are all of the goal documents that I could find in the district. So there are overarching Board of Education goals. There are goals clearly that the board set for me through my contract as I came in. We've got the Engage 200 feedback document that came together. We have school improvement goals. We have the board parking lot, and really what we attempted to do for you to start the discussion tonight was to capture all of those goal statements in a chart, just in a sort of visually in a chart form. And so truly what is on the Vision 2018 chart should not be information that's new to the board. It should, I don't think that it represents a plan of work that the board has not really already in some way tasked previously through either a goal document that you developed or through the Engage 200 document. But we wanted to capture it in one place, because there were even some spots where I think we had multiple documents kind of referencing the same thing, just doing it maybe even with a little different terminology. And so we really wanted to kind of get it all onto to one document. So a little bit about the orientation of the Vision 2018 document. It's set up so that on the top you do have the mission of the school district, which is really the overarching goal to everything that we do, what it is that we want to accomplish with our students. And underneath that mission statement, there are 5 categories, kind of 5 umbrella categories. Those include support systems, finance, student achievement, community engagement, and facilities. Underneath each of those kind of 5 broad goal areas is a goal statement written in the form of a commitment to to our community. And that commitment really captures the goal for that specific area. So just by way of an example in student achievement, our commitment is to increase student learning mastery of 21st century skills. In support systems, that commitment is to develop and maintain effective systems of support that promote quality learning experiences for all students. And then on the bottom of the chart, captured in the we will statements, are really the individual objectives that we believe need to be targeted in support of that commitment statement. So the chart is really intended to be kind of what you would call a strategic plan on a page, a one-page document that really maps out the roadmap, and a couple of again comments tied to the whole piece. We do believe that this represents a full plate of work for the school district. And so I know we're going to have some conversation tonight about areas of priority, perhaps even some other things that might be of interest to bring onto the plate. But I do think one reason it's very valuable to have a defined plate, a defined focus to the work is that really the two themes that I have continued to carry forward and use in conversation are focus and alignment. We've got to have a focus, got to know what it is that we're working on, and then we've got to have alignment through the organization to that. And so as I referenced in the introduction to this, the review and development of this document with the administrative team, absolutely critical that with all of our building principals, we also spent time reviewing this document to ensure that the work that they're focused on within an individual building also aligns with the focus that we've set at the district level. And so I do feel good about the fact that that's happened. One more thing I just want to mention, which again I think as we work through the discussion on the Vision 2018 chart, there are two additional pieces of paper in your packet that are right behind the Vision 2018 chart. They should look like this. And one of the things that I recognize, and I guess the reason we brought you two examples of this, is that I am certain that some of you are looking at this chart and saying, well, there's not necessarily a lot of detail to some of these items. There's still, even within the commitment statements, there's some broad language around what that commitment is. And so one of the things that we've begun to work on and are suggesting would be the corresponding document. The second layer to this chart would be an individual detail plan that would map out the measurables associated with each of those objectives, the specific process steps timeline that we would follow, resources that would be needed to address that area, and ultimately who owns the responsibility for that particular objective. And so I do want to share with the board, we have not done or developed this chart for every one of the items that are on this chart yet, candidly, because I want to make sure that we know fully what the plate is first, and then can move forward with the more detailed level of planning that would support it. Yet I wanted you to have a couple of examples of what we would envision kind of the second layer of support, especially at the board level, looking like to the chart that's here. And so we can go through these in greater detail if we want to later into the discussion, but I just wanted to connect the dots in terms of how we would envision this looking as a strategic plan for the board, for the school district, and then the layer of support with it.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. So one of the things that before we really get into a discussion of this year's goals and further working with Vision 2018 as a template, I want to make sure, and I think we've done this pretty much every year, that the board still feels our mission, our vision, and our belief statements are still valid and are something that apply and are carried out through this Vision 2018. So we need to kind of reaffirm those and then maybe take a minute or two to make sure, maybe have some questions for Dr. Schuler as to how those might be reflected in here if you're uncertain whether or not they are contained in here. Because I think they really need to be kind of in lockstep if I'm seeing things clearly. So it's a little bit of a change from what we've done in the past, but go ahead, Mr. Roman.
I have to admit that in the past years, when I've been asked to look at the vision statement and mission statement, I've kind of blown it through and say, if everybody has a consensus on it, I'm fine with it and so forth. But I took to heart the instructions we got this year. Our homework would be to review the mission statement and the vision statement. And I don't have any trouble with the substance of the vision statement or mission statement. I just have trouble with some of the words that were used in there. In the vision statement, we say that our school district is highly regarded for the competence and character of our students. I think we need to embrace that every child in our school system is competent. All right? I think what we do is they're highly regarded for their achievements in the character or their accomplishments in the character. And I would like us to maybe massage the word competence and make it a little more meaningful and so forth. And I don't know the background behind the wording of it, so I may be stepping on somebody's toes on this, and if I am, I apologize. But competence seems to be a low bar, and I would like to see us, our students are highly regarded for their accomplishments, and each student has their own level of accomplishment. And they vary, but I think that's what we celebrate. It's a minor thing, but it's one thing I looked at. In the mission statement, our mission is to, let's see. Oh, in the vision statement, we also, students and the excellence of our people. I thought we would change people to staff. That would tie it into the belief statement, where we have a highly qualified, nurturing, and enthusiastic staff. I'm not as enthusiastic about that change as I am about changing competence, but I want to focus on what we celebrate in excellence of our people. I think it's really the staff, since we've already pointed out the students in the third line.
Okay, we're going to just stop there, and we'll
I know these are not big things, but
no, I mean we can discuss that, and then we can move on to any comments you might have on the vision statement. Does anybody have any other? I'm sorry, the mission statement. I need to turn your mic off.
I don't want anybody else to
Are we?
speak.
It's not on anyway.
I'm on, I think.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, because I hit my button before you hit your button. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Gambiani, go right ahead. And then I'll chime in.
Here's my suggestion would be this. The senior leadership team and Dr. Schuler have worked tirelessly in putting this document together. I think it's pretty difficult for us tonight, short of being here for 5 hours, to agree on a new vision statement. Personally, I would rather have the senior leadership team take this document. You've got 5 categories, which each one has a commitment, which is what that vision statement really is supposed to, roll into. And take those 5 categories, which are under our commitment, and try to create, if you will, a new vision statement for the district. I don't think I'm prepared or qualified to do that tonight by any means. I mean, there's a lot of important words in these 5 categories you've identified, and I believe we need some type of a roadmap to help us craft a meaningful and accurate vision statement now that you've spent the time and effort to do what you've done. That's just my observation, but I think that would be extremely helpful for a board member like myself to have a better guidance and some direction on how we can then effectively craft a new vision statement. But again, that's just my approach.
Ms. Conklin, want to jump in, or should I from the...
Go right.
Well, Mrs. Skyhill and I were part of the team that crafted the vision statement from community input. So it was sort of a little mini Engage 200. So, where we got a lot of community input, crafted the statements. And while I can appreciate the maybe not so exciting term of competence, I will tell you that, and I don't remember exactly why we landed there, but we felt as though achievement meant, you know, something that gets routinely recognized and, you know, and lauded, and people win ribbons and stuff like that. But competence means, are they really ready to get out there and face the world? So I think, but I'm not willing to fall on my sword for that word. But I will also tell you that we put people in there and not just staff, because we wanted to include the whole District 200 community, including the parents, the PTAs, all the people who support our schools. So we want to celebrate everyone's contribution, not simply just the staff. So that's why we put people in there, to be all-inclusive, school board members, you know, staff, et cetera. So, you know, I don't know what you might want to do with that for discussion. I think there probably is a better word than competence, but that's just the rationale on how we landed on it. I'm not wedded to it. But I think people, in the broad sense, you know, is kind of where we landed, because we wanted to make sure there was no misunderstanding that from, you know, it includes everybody who works for us, all of our employees, and the people who support us in terms of board members, parents, the whole family of District 200. We could vote, I mean, well, if you want to make changes, we can make changes at the next board. You know, we could take a vote on a new mission statement at the next board meeting. I'd like to know how you feel, what you feel we should do. Mr. Matheson?
Yeah, as a board member, make decisions on important issues we deal with. I think those statements are fine. I think the modification would be fine. I'm a little concerned that how many pieces of paper like we have printed up and around here, I don't know that one word change is going to change my philosophy, and I run the board, and if it costs $1,000, it's too much to fix all that stuff. So, you know, or fixed isn't the right word, to modify it. So, you know, I'm more than happy with it is, and it'll help me make my decisions as I move forward as a board member.
Other feedback?
Yeah, I had looked at it and didn't have any alarming or suggestions. I do appreciate Jim's comment. I agree with Mr. Matheson that I don't think it's worth redoing everything. And I had the same comment about, or thought about staff versus people, that people is more encompassing, and I do like the word people. So I guess I'm fine with the vision statement as it is. I wouldn't want to make it, my concern about trying to incorporate these 5 commitment statements is it would become too wordy in some fashion. I like the simplicity of that. I think all of those issues are embedded somehow in this document, which I like, by the way. So I'm comfortable with the vision statement as is.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with it. If it was that we wanted, excuse me, to add something, change a direction, but for now, you know, I would say the next time we could update it with maybe different wordage, but really if it boils down to just confidence, I don't think it's worth touching.
I honestly viewed the vision statement as Jim has in the past, but we were instructed to take a look at it. I took a look at it. I would prefer something more meaningful than competence. I'm comfortable with people versus staff. I mentioned that before. But I think I won't take a look at it again for another 2 years, okay?
Well, I guess my feeling is, number one, if we were to make a change in the wording, that we would use the materials we have, and as we're printing new ones, then, you know, so we wouldn't be wasting materials that we have already underway. I'm thinking that maybe through this exercise, maybe Mr. Gambiani has a point there, that through this exercise, maybe a word will shine, you know, or come out as the staff gets used to using the terminology in here. And maybe, you know, if they come up with a better word on down the road, we can then present that to the board and then make those changes at that time. Because, you know, we all get hung up in calling different people different things and different actions, different things, and perhaps through you know, this exercise, something else will pop and be more suitable, and we can go from there. Okay. Well, thank you. That was, I appreciate you looking at that, and I think that was a good suggestion. Mr. Matheson.
I have one last comment. If I were to add any word, I would add the words, and figure out how to fund it.
No, not to mention that.
Okay. All right, anything on the mission statement while we're at it?
Again, with the background I've already given, I would like to see in the mission statement, in the last line there, to reach the highest level of learning and emotional and social development rather than personal, because that aligns with the obligations that we have to address the emotional and social development of our children. At least to have that considered by the staff as we go forward.
Is there other development within personal that is in addition to social and emotional?
I actually gave some thought to that, Brad. And for the time I've been on the board, we've been had any number of sessions where we've talked about the emotional and social development programs that we have. And I thought if that is a term of art that we're required to comply and to implement, it should be in our mission. That's all.
I like those words better. They certainly are part of what we've been talking about for the last few years, and I'm sure the future, and more descriptive. But again, next time, we probably will have some words missing, or if it meant something different. So, I'd say we wait a little bit.
I'm ambivalent. I think social emotional development are the words to, you know, du jour. I think personal development encompasses social emotional. I don't know what else could be considered part of personal development except for maybe citizenship. And there might be some other service orientation. You know, so from that point of view, I think personal maybe is more encompassing. But I could go either way. If you want to wait for, again, something to pop out of this exercise, you know, maybe that's the right thing to do, and see if there are some, because these are really put out there so that the community understands what we're all about, so people coming in understand what we're all about, and so staff has guidance, and if this doesn't give the staff enough guidance to do their work day to day, then, you know, yes, we probably should change them. But I think from doing your work day to day, maybe you could come up with, if there's something in there that's hampering you, or if there's something in there that could be better, then maybe we'll proceed along those lines.
I think the answer to that question is gonna come when you get into the discussion on this chart. So if you don't think that this chart really represents the direction you would like for the school district to go, then that might be a valid question, but I just think that candidly, this is where that work is defined, much more so than in the statement itself.
Okay. Okay, and then the belief statements, I don't know if you want to go, I think those need to be tied to this Vision 2018, and I think as I read through them, I thought they were tied in very well. As you've had a chance to review the materials, was there any thought that the belief statements were no longer valid either through the Engage 200 recommendations or through what you see on the Vision 2018? Do you have any comments on that? Okay, so where do you want to start with goals then?
I actually developed, can I go first?
Sure.
I developed some thoughts that most that are pretty much fit into the statement. Question, we've heard a lot about professional development recently, well, not recently, for a long time. And at least since I've been on the board. And so that was one of the goals that I had wanted to accomplish this year was what is the plan for professional development, setting aside the issue whether we can fund it, but at least knowing that we have a plan in place. So I guess my first question is, when I read through these 24 statements, 2 of them stood out as professional development, which is under support systems, the 3rd bullet. Additional training and development for staff related to 3 specific areas at risk, English learners and special education. And then under, I guess, student achievement, the last one, digital and face-to-face staff development. Are those the 2 points within these 24 that relate to professional development? Is there something I'm missing? Which question?
That actually was a good question. I didn't mean to answer it so succinctly that I did. Yes, I think that's where you're going to see the development occur. I think that the other place where I think it's going to be embedded as well, though, Brad, is when you look at professional learning communities. So in the concept of a professional learning community as well, it expands the concept of professional learning beyond what I think would have been traditionally the forums where professional learning can take place, and I think recognizes the fact that an awful lot of professional learning also happens in this job embedded fashion in the way that teachers are working with teaching each other and expanding, the repertoire. So that would be, I think, the 3rd place where there is some professional development embedded in the chart.
So that concept, which seems to be one of the more important things you've had conversations about, is kind of embedded in multiple locations here. And I guess as I think about what should the goals be for this year or a longer period of time, is I would like to, and I don't know if it's a board goal or a superintendent goal, but I would love to see what the plan should be. Because we can't fund it, we can't communicate it unless we know what the plan is. So that was the first thing that kind of stood out. And I reflect back on a year ago when I asked Dr. Harris, what's the one thing that was left out of the budget? It was professional development. So that would be number 1 on my list of goals is what to develop and establish what the plan should be.
Anything you want to add to that? You said before.
I just want to know if you'd already read my goals for the year.
Did not see them until tonight.
No, some of those plans are in the work, and you're right. Sometimes if you're hindered by, well, what can we afford, it's a different type of a question than what we would like to be able to do.
I would add one item on that too, in that category, and that would be the one right below under the support services, the design implementation of the evaluation process. Because that's the ultimate objective of, did it work, did it perform, so that we can evaluate its success. So I think that's really part of that same goal, if you want to call it that. And that's really the full cycle then.
Along those lines, I agree with both Brad and Jim on this. And specifically, I think as part of the Engage 200 process, I think we're almost obligated, or at least I feel this way, that when we're developing the budget and reviewing the budget, when it's first introduced to us in January, February, and as it progresses, that specific line items, if it gets down to that detail, for professional development should be identified, so that if we need to make adjustments in the budget as the year goes along, as we did this past year, and have to make modifications to the budget before it's finally adopted, where it may either require the cutting of some professional development programs in order to have a balanced budget, or enhancement of it. We can specifically identify where that is, because I think the community required it. I mean, that's one thing they listed in student achievement, is they want professional development. And we have to show how we're delivering it, And if we can't deliver it, why we can't deliver it. I don't know how that, I think that's part of the plan. And that would go along with almost anything else that we're obligated to do, whether it be technology, it's the same sort of thing. Identify where in the budget we're meeting that goal that the community has given us. Or if we're not meeting it, why we're not meeting it, because we don't have the money or whatever. And if there's any adjustments during the course of finalizing the budget, how that's impacting those elements.
I like that notion, and it almost seems to me that, what we probably, can do is do that same exercise, let's say, for other things that we would like to do across the board. You know, we'd like to have, let's say, just as a gross example, class size maximum of 32 at the high school level, let's say, but our class size that we can afford is 35. I mean, so this way, there's a, and I'm not using real numbers, teachers in the back of the room. I'm just using it in examples. You know, because if we can't afford lowering our class sizes to where we really would like them to be, then at least we've said to the community, here's what we can afford, but here's where we really would like to be. I mean, maybe is that the same sort of thing you're thinking about?
Not quite part. I have all the confidence in the world that Bill, Faith, and Dr. Schuler, with respect, for example, for professional development, will identify the programs initially that we can implement for the upcoming year for professional development, and put them in the budget that we, at least the preliminary budget that we see. So we can tell the community, this is what we're doing. Now, hopefully we'll have some feedback from the community and say, that's great. If no, it's not great, we need some more, or we might want to have some different emphasis, but if we don't have that feedback, at least we've presented the information to the community. Then as the year goes along, we find out that revenue projections are falling short of where we originally thought they were, expenses are more than we thought they were in other areas, and we have to start cutting. We can identify specifically what programs we're cutting or reducing in response, so the community knows where we're going, and they can get a sense of how we're falling short because of budget restrictions, financial restrictions, and can help us identify, well, we need to change our priorities somehow. And that was my thrust of my comments. I'm sorry. And again, that applies not only to program development, but to technology, to staffing, to all the other issues that were identified in the Project 200 recommendations.
Just real quickly, I put a $sign next to whatever, if it seemed like it was costing money to do these things, and some aren't. I think if I just did it quickly, it's about 50-50. So, besides staff time, of course, to implement these, some of them, could we say, well, like remain committed to highlighting student and staff achievement both at district and school level? So that's not really going to cost, that's Erica's time, but, and administrator, so that there is probably a $sign attached to all of these, but, you know, significant one. So, would it be helpful to break out the ones, the easy ones, I don't want to start with the easy ones, that, yeah, we can do that, and then the $sign ones, just, you know, prioritize them?
How would you respond to that, or how would you like to, you know, maybe we're going down the wrong path.
I don't know that you're going down the wrong path. I guess I'm not sure that you're probably going to see that fully without the next level of detail that will follow this. So again, if you do come back to the two samples that we gave you, there was a more detailed chart developed for you around implementation of you know, Common Core ELA, language arts, and then social emotional learning. And it's really there that we've begun, if you look all the way down in the right side, right bottom side of that chart, that you see the resources that it's gonna cost to implement it. So I guess, Joanne, what I would say is I hate for you to start prioritizing right now what you think you can and can't afford without some of the, probably some of that level of detail. And I just think that might be a little bit early in conversation. My personal sense is, first level of discussion ought to be is what's on the plate, what you want to see on the plate, are there things that are missing? Are there things that, based on feedback from CUSD200, discussion or thoughts that you've had with other community groups, is there anything that's missing on this, or candidly, is there anything that's on here that you really look at and say it's not a priority for me? I'd rather not see us focusing any time, energy, and effort on it. Let's try to define the plate first, and then I think we can have a discussion as we start to talk about committees on how do we add that next layer of detail and then begin to do some prioritizing from within those.
And in that regard, Dr. Shula, their work, the Engage 200 process identified for, in the area of student achievement and co-curricular activities, getting parent volunteers and partnerships with other organizations. I know there are some issues and problems with that, but that's something the community identified, and it's not addressed in here. And whether it can be implemented or not, I don't know, but it's something the community identified, and it's not in here.
Jim, last bullet under community engagement.
Under,
Community engagement.
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's, okay, but I was looking for it because there was specific came up as student achievement and co-curricular activities. So if it's under community engagement, what does that mean? I mean, is it something that we're just going to get more information from the community about how to do this, or in the other area, let's see what, I guess that was it. That was the one thing I thought was missing in the substantive part. I saw it in the community engagement part.
I'd like to see, maybe I'm approaching this the wrong way, but, if we're setting goals, the ultimate issue with the goal is to see whether we achieve the goal. And I'm not really seeing in here per se, and I don't know how to include it in there, but, let's say that the goal is to have higher ACT scores, something simple. And what's a unit of measure then? Where do we get at the end? So I think as I look at each of these, I'm saying to myself, what is the fundamental goal? But more importantly, can we measure it? And if we measure it, we have different levels of achievement so that we're making progress, or we're achieving above a standard or below a standard or whatever. So I think as we look at each of these, I guess I want to make sure we have a unit of measure to determine what our success is. And if we can't measure it, I don't know that I want it as a goal. I guess that would be my thought. If it's not usable information, it isn't worth trying to identify. So that would be my one other thought here.
That kind of goes along with Mrs. Swanson's request to have a dashboard that allows the community to accurately see the results of their investment. So we've talked about this before. We have a dashboard for finance. We really should have some sort of a dashboard for student achievement. We want our ACT scores to be thus and they're that, and I don't know what we need to decide on and measure. We need to focus on good indicators of success and then monitor those indicators of success. And I know that's a lot to do at this point in time, but I know we do look at student success regularly, we do look at student achievement, but it would be, I think we would be remiss if we didn't have, at least in the near future, some concrete, measurable student achievement goal. I firmly believe that, and I think we should be at the point where we could put a dashboard together for our community to see.
How many goals are we trying to identify here? I mean, because again, I'm with Jim over here. I mean, laser focus is gonna be required to achieve any of these goals. They've gotta be, to Jim's, attainable, measurable, quantifiable. And so I guess the question I've got is, do we have a number we're looking for to provide board goals? I mean, that we're trying to assess and make realistic and achievable and measurable?
I think we're struggling with this stuff.
What's that?
I think we're struggling with all there's so much on the plate here that I think we're struggling to put it all into, 5 succinct, 3 succinct, whatever, succinct statements, that we were just so used to doing. So maybe we need more guidance from you to help us through putting this into some goals for for this year and for maybe, and your commitment essentially is your goal, as I see it on here. You have 5 commitments for the next 4 years. So your 4-year goals are these 5 commitments. Is that correct? And then how you break them down year by year and how they get measured would be the goals that we would set each year. If I'm reading it right.
You would, but again, I think there's gonna be some guidance to that in kind of that next level of detail. So again, Barb and I think Jim, I can answer both of these questions at the same time. If you go to, look at this second level document that talks about SEL, social emotional learning. And there are a couple of things that are going to be embedded in that document. So if you look down to what would be the 4th box where it says indicator of accomplishment or success, that's where I think your measurables are going to come tied to the implementation of this goal area. I do want to be careful in saying there's a lot of the work that we do in education, though, that can't be measured by a simple single metric. And so I just think there's a risk if we get into the habit of saying, if we can't measure it easily or succinctly, let's toss it out as not meaningful work. I think that is going to shortchange some of the things that we do that candidly may be more process-oriented and not as easily, measurable. But I think that's the section in the goal document where we're going to be attempting to address that and put a measurable to it. I think when you get down into the process, the steps, some of these things are going to be more easily implemented over a year or two. Candidly, there may be some of the goal areas on here that when we get into laying out the process or the step, you don't see an action on it this year. May not start until next year, I think the year after that. But, candidly, this is intended to be a longer range planning document to give us, I think, to give us a bigger picture view of what it is that we're going to accomplish. And I think then you're going to pull from this on an annual basis what your plan of work is going to look like, based on this. So, and then I'll try to answer the last question. I think, Jim, I'm not sure what the magic number is going to be in terms of, the number of goals that we believe that we can handle. But we've put this together as a recommendation for you. So I think there's a belief that, this is manageable. As we get into developing all of this second level of detail, we may wind up finding out there's something on here that's too much, needs to get moved on. I'm also certain over the next 4 years that something else is going to come on the plate. As much as we want to say we need to have a laser focus over the next 4 years, something new is going to come on that's going to challenge us. It may be something we're not thinking about now that makes it onto the plate as a mandate from, a different authority that may well come on here. And so, there's got to be a level of fluidity to this as well. I think it's good to have a long-term focus, but you got to have some agility in terms of, how you adjust and, look at things if something else comes on and changes. So, I hear, I think, Barb, your concern in terms of sort of the detail that corresponds to this. I think it will become clearer as we work through that, and I think Jim will be able to address some of those concerns as these are developed, because candidly, if we develop one of these charts and it doesn't have the measurable focus that you feel like it needs to have, then you know, we've got to relook at it through, I think, through the development of it.
I think that I agree with what you're saying, and I think our role as a board is, you know, up here, and that up here has to have some unit of measure. And so, you know, there may be steps along the way that may not be measurable, but, you know, that's your job, so to say, to get us, we're doing this because it's going to lead to this ultimate goal. So I think both to the community's response and our own as board members' response, we need to be sure that we know where we're going, and that has to be a measurable event. And you know, all the steps in between are great, you know, I mean, but I have no ability to evaluate this, you know, this detail. I have the ability to say that the end result is something that's in our Engage 200 chart, okay? So I guess I'm trying to think at that level. So, you know, to me, there's got to be a unit of measure. And, you know, again, there's a lot of steps along the way, and maybe the end objective is 4 years out or whatever, but, you know, I think I have trouble not envisioning a goal without an objective of what we're trying to target in a way to measure what we got to. So, you know, that would be my thought on it. So, and again, I think, you know, being a non-educator or non-skilled person on what you're trying to achieve, there's always a way to measure, in my opinion. So.
Can I ask you a question though? Are those, under the indicators of accomplishment, are those not units of measure for you?
Let's be specific which one you're talking about.
I was looking at the social emotional learning.
One of these two?
Yeah, there's one that, look on the top where it says SLT owner Joanne Pinopoulos.
Okay, where's the performance?
So if you look at
Got
the
it.
indicators
Right
of
above the red line.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, but I think again, if I'm looking at it from a board level, I've got to say that, you know, what are we trying to achieve here as a board level that meets our criteria under what I'll call the, you know, the 200, you know, Engage 200. You know, I'm sure that I could, you know, again, I'm seeing some detail here. As long as I can relate it back to what I'll call the community level understanding of achievement. That's really what I want. And these are maybe interim steps to get to that end goal. And that's fine. But, you know, I think, again, I need to be accountable to the community at the end goal. So.
Did Joanne create this from this? Or did you just make it from what you think should be done in the next 4 years? Because definitely, I mean, these indicators are definitely, you know, we can evaluate them. And then our timeline, I mean, we could say if we had one of these from everybody, I mean, make it very simple and just say, well, everybody gets their top 4, their things done in that year. Because if that happened, would we then have, I guess I'm just a little confused if these are pulled from here, or are they just what their department needs?
So the at the very top where it says so third line down, strategic focus, social emotional learning, commitment will design and implement a systemic approach to social and emotional learning. That commitment comes off of this chart, right? So the strategies that are on here would drive the development of the second layer of detail. That makes sense?
Yep.
Right, so every bullet point here is supported by a more detailed implementation plan with a timeline, needed resources, and the measurable indicator.
And so obviously they just pull from this what pertains to them, or they could, yeah. So that's a good idea.
Well, you know, this is great, but I think for the board, we should, I mean, I want to know that this exists and that the administration and the senior leadership team is working on it, but I don't think we need to concern ourselves with the details. I looked at this in detail, and so I don't interpret any of these 24 points as goals for the year, so I don't think they need to be measurable. What I did was, which of these things, if this is what we want to accomplish by the end of 4 years, if this is our vision, what do we as a board, that's the question, what does the board want to make as our goals this year? Which of these do we need to pull out, develop a goal statement, which would be measurable, and focus on this year? And then, you know, if we get to July of 2015 and decide we want to create a new goal, pull something else out, that would be the objective. So I didn't take these as 24 goal statements, which would be way beyond the number of 3 which I had in my mind. But I didn't read it this way. This is a vision, this is what our commitment is, and this is what we're going to do to accomplish that commitment, and we entrust the administration to help accomplish that. What do we need to pull out of these as goals for the board? And that's the way I interpreted this vision statement, which I'm pretty good with all of it. I have 2 other ideas for goals this year beyond professional development, when we're ready.
Well, why don't we, we'll let the superintendent, you know, just discuss that, but I think this is the struggle that we're all having, is that this is kind of a very different way for the board to be developing goals. And for those of you who have watched it over the years, so I like fitting the goals into this structure, but I think we're still struggling with, again, coming up with what are we going to do as a district, which the board supports, so we've in the past done a board-focused goal and then a superintendent or district-focused goal. We don't have to do that. We could just make it a district goal and show what all of our parts are in accomplishing that goal. I mean, so we can depart from what we've done in the past in that light, but I think we do need to get down to some level of concrete, what is it we want to accomplish this year as a district? And I think that's kind of rephrasing what's been said around the table here. And the more we can come to that, at least where do we want to focus for this year tonight, the better, discussion we can have. So I'm sorry, go ahead now, you can add whatever.
I'm not sure there's much else that I don't think there's much I can add to that. I guess my one comment, though, that I will make about goals is that I have a concern if you develop separate superintendent goals from board goals, that there's no reason they shouldn't be the same. I mean, we are working on the mission of the school district, and so candidly, part of the development of a long-term planning document is to get away from that, is to get away from sort of the annual process of just kind of saying, what's the interest this year, and let's pull that out and and throw it onto the table. I would be curious, and I think maybe it's an okay conversation to play out. I think what you're starting to go down a road of are, what are your priorities or interests from within this chart? Mm-hmm. And I think if we maybe start with that discussion rather than the semantics of a goal, I'm confident as we develop this second layer of detail, the priorities that you establish for us are going to help to determine what do you want to see us focusing on this year, what are the things that maybe are important on here, but from at least the board perspective, you wouldn't be concerned if you didn't see a 2014-15 implementation of something within here. I think we may be talking the same language, just
in a different way.
Yeah, in a different way. So let's move into that discussion, and I have a feeling from that we will be able to kind of come back and emerge with a document that fills both. But last thing I will say, I would love for us to get away from having multiple levels of goals that are just written and phased in different ways, because that's confusing for people.
I'm on board with that. I'd rather have consistent goals for the group.
I agree with that as well. And I think we started kind of doing what maybe we were talking about here. when Brad brought up the professional development, we identified, 4 or 5 items on this chart, that maybe there's this top level concern, and these are 4 of the 5 items that really kind of pertain to it. And there'll be some overlap and so on, but I think if we set that kind of overall goal, and then we try to identify some of these, I think we're gonna achieve it. And at the end of the day, if some of these don't have any association at all, those are ones that I guess we're gonna by default say that they aren't important, or they're not as important, is a better word. So, I think again, to move forward in that direction, but I would go as, let's say that professional development is 1, there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 items there, I believe, that are kind of related. So, you got another one?
I got 2 more.
There you go.
And then we got our 3.
There you go.
3, unless somebody else wants.
Go ahead. We'll see.
So if professional development was the thing we talked about the most. Technology would be probably number 2. And I look at student achievement, point 4, improve the learning environment by creating common expectations on best practices in instruction and use of technology. And I think something related to technology should be one of our major focuses this year. And there's 2 things that are kind of front in my mind that tie together to that. And if my request was to have a formal plan for professional development, I think we also need to have a formal plan for what technology access looks like. We talked about one-to-one. We talked about how we might have a different plan for technology access developing by the FIT committee, the FIT vision. I think that's critical. And I also think linking that to a goal we had as a board last year that we didn't even look at, which is to review and update the policies for student and staff use of technology in and out of the classroom. I think those 2 things come together. And I can tell you that policy thing.
We did that.
We did? Well, then I'm confused.
Well, we did it actually in the student policy, between the harassment and the bullying, and then within, there was another student policy. It wasn't, the student policies were not, a separate technology policy per se, so. Anyway,
Okay,
go
well,
ahead.
I looked at the word staff use, or student and staff use of technology, and here's where I think we have confusion.
Okay.
And this is from my personal experience. At the middle school level, the way that, what I have heard is the middle schools have different interpretation of the technology usage the 4 different schools. Some of it had to do with how one of the schools had some issues at the end of last year and pulled back on how students can use technology. We got an email from a parent at the beginning of the year about when technology is used in Monroe. So I had looked at the board policy for technology, I've looked at the student handbook. I'm confused about how those things are interacted, and if I look at the development of a technology access plan that aligns with the vision, I just feel like there's something within that point that needs to be clarified for students, for parents, for teachers. So that would be my request for a second major goal is what is the technology plan?
I think another goal that should have great focus and attention to would be facilities management and the upkeep of the buildings. I served on that committee with you, and there's a comprehensive plan out there, there's no question. So that's, kudos to all the guys and gals who put that together. It's an extremely powerful document and useful document, but I think we are always in a knee-jerk reaction relative to how we take that comprehensive plan and execute it. And oftentimes that involves, possible burdening the public with money or taxes or whatever the case. But I just think we just have to make that a real focus and a goal and really wrap around a plan to execute and start pecking away at the challenges that are not going to go away. They're only going to worsen, in my opinion. But you guys have done a wonderful job with the monies you had to work for, but I think that just has to really get great focus and attention as a particular goal. And that's going to be ongoing, obviously, but it's got to be at the forefront.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize that the master facilities plan that we have is a huge spreadsheet. It's very difficult for anyone to really assess, for those of us lay people to assess and really understand. Yeah, the Engage 200 folks asked us to develop a facilities master plan. And I think my understanding of that is that we would take what information we have already available and come up with where do we need a strong capital improvements to be made that may require either borrowing or referendum to support. When we had the Jefferson referendum, there was a question out there in the community. Well, you're asking us to support the $16 million facility. How do we know that in 2 years you won't be coming to ask for $30 million for whatever? And it was hard for me to pull from the master facilities plan we have right now what that would be. So what we have here is to maintain a facilities master plan, but I think we really need to develop a facilities master plan that really prioritizes where our capital improvements money need to be. And from that, as the community engaged 200 said, we can identify that early childhood learning facility that the community's asked us to evaluate.
Does anybody have our goal from last year? Because I think we're a little redundant. Again? Or from this year? Because, you know, we already review and update policies and staff use of technology. It seems like we're always put technology in there a little. Okay. So I guess how did we do? Have we measured how we did with this year or last school year? And then, you know, life obviously would be so much easier if we had more money. And 3 of these things would relate to that: explore alternative revenue sources, continue to collaborate with our agencies to reduce or restrict spending, and determine and implement additional strategies utilizing volunteers and partnerships. So I'm wondering if that shouldn't be like a real priority, or say there is, you know, I guess I was going to say there isn't a way to get more money, but besides tax. Because if we ever go to the community, then we have to say, well, we tried all these things already. So I think that should be one of our top things, because it's going to be so much easier if we get more revenue. Or streamline, which comes to, because we do have like districts where they combine their buying power, and so they can buy things cheaper. Do we already do that?
Yeah. We probably always could.
So what are those alternative revenue sources? But definitely we can use volunteers and partnerships.
But should that be a goal just for this year, to do all this? Should that be just like something we do every year?
Well, I think all of these we do every year, but we haven't actually tried to find an alternative revenue source.
We're trying to lose one. We're not trying, sorry.
Can you,
Oh, sorry.
you know, I had some thoughts along those lines, and, you know, I've been asked to be a liaison to the New 200 Foundation, which we are trying to resurrect. And I will be asking, they need to build their board, so I will be asking all of the board members here tonight if you could give me some candidates that we could maybe contact to be board members, because right now they're down to about 3 people. And we need to build that board and get that foundation running. And they would like to take a very active role. Erica's been helping them out as well from the staff level. She's been the staff liaison, and you know, there are other districts our size or a little bit larger. We have very well run, very thriving foundations, and I think what we need to do is take what the recommendation from Engage 200 was to say, you know, look for other ways to get money, and maybe help as we can, boost that foundation. So we're getting ready to do that, but we're gonna need support, because all of you have contacts who maybe would be good candidates to be helping that foundation, and we'll be doing a lot of fundraising. But we need to make sure and support that as much as we can as a district. And the other thing I think I would like to see, and I don't know who's in charge of this anymore, we used to have a director of grants. And that director of grants went after money for us. And I know somebody is doing that, but I don't know who's doing it or how it's being reported on. But I think our community needs to see, number one, we need to assess, are we doing all we can in the area of grants? And number two, and if we're not, why not? And if it means staff resources or whatever. But number two would be, does the community know what we're doing in terms of getting grants? So I think we have an issue there as to, are we doing all we can, or does the community understand that we're doing all we can? And if not, why not, and can we remedy that? So I don't know what other alternative sources of funding there might be, aside from grants and private donations.
I understand what you're talking about. One of the problems we have, we start treading on the waters of the boosters clubs and the PTAs, because they have a lot of golf outings and runs and things, and they're raising money. We're getting a lot of benefit from that. So, when we start doing it, competing for those same dollars, it's confusing. So, but, going back kind of this, and I think that is a valid item, but I think if we look at kind of what we just talked about, there's probably 5 general categories here. And as I've gone through these, almost every one of them applies in some way to those 5, one of those 5. And then finance literally is, all encompassing. It supports every one of these items. So, when I look at it, I could almost say, I don't know what I would call it professional development, but I'd call it staffing. And if I went down this list, I could put it in that category. Another one is technology. I got the same thing that I could do. Facilities management is the same thing, so, and then the last one I would call is communication of what we're achieving. So, the result and the communication of that. And I think every one of these is covered in some way. So, if I were to stand back and say, what are the 5 topical goals, they would be that, and these would be somewhat subtopics along with it, and then a priority with staff deciding on which ones are achievable in the near term and which are, almost kind of putting them in order of achievement. This is next year, this is, down the road, or, again, maybe refine it a little bit that way. And then I think we've developed this chart. And, and those 5 categories, as I see it, are what we've been just talking about. And, and I think if I look at the vision of where we've got challenges, I think, we've got to react to the funding. We've got to, we haven't, we talked about Jefferson. We haven't addressed that issue. And there's a lot of things that fall under these general categories that become subtopics of the overview. And, so I think we're moving right in the right direction here. And I think it just needs some refinement to maybe categorize it that way a little bit so that it kind of meets this kind of goal mentality we have as a board, and then the subcategories of achievement here. And, and then we need to communicate all that. So, that's kind of what I'm hearing developing out of this process.
I don't know that I totally understood that, so let's take a step back if you can. Are you suggesting the 5 categories that we already have identified are not the?
Well, let's talk about, we went around the table a little bit. We talked about, I'll call it staff development, I'll call that staffing in general. Okay, we talked about buildings. Okay, that's a major category. We talked about technology, and again, all these cross these lines. And and if I look at these, what I'll call goals, I could go down every one of these and label it at how it affiliate to one of those items. Communication being the other one, and then finance in its overall view. So, I could look down here, and I don't know how that again makes sense to put that in a vision, but. If I said the 5 visions that we have just addressed as the board here tonight, or the categories, these all fall within those categories. And maybe that's the reshuffle of the blend of the 2 things we're talking about. Because I think that all the objectives here are adequate, are appropriate. you know, but it, you know, maybe the first one isn't achievable this year or whatever, and, you know, they go down the line, but those are the big things, I think. Those are what I heard out of this community engagement, the engagement 200. I mean, you know, with those kind of general categories that are understandable to us as a board, you know, and then these are breakdowns of that. And, you know, and we start breaking them into those pieces, and, you know, I think we've got a blend of what you're trying to achieve here, as well as our old school mentality, I'll call it, of goal direction.
Dr. Shu, I think, for me, the items below, or the will-do statements, those are tactical, those are, you know, those are executed, those are items to be executed, but I believe that as we look at the 30,000-foot level, which is what we're supposed to be doing here for goals for the district for this year, or to coincide even with the 2018 plan, those are, I think, those generic categories, but all-encompassing, and many of these things, not many, all these things, I believe, will fall into those goals, if you will, such as facilities management, technology, staff development, and communication, or whatever that other goal may be. And then these are those executables, if you will, that will fall within that. And that's your expertise and the staff's expertise, and those are, I think, to Jim's point, going to all fall within those 4 categories, or those 4 goals that we might land on. Does that make any sense?
Well, no, I guess I just want to make sure I'm understanding the direction. So you would like to see the chart reworked around the 4 categories that you just...
No. Use what you got here and weave it into the 4 goals that we would lay out, because I think these are elements that will validate and achieve those goals that we're looking for. That's the way I view it. The document's excellent.
I think if I were to do exactly what Jim just said, I'd go down, and that's kind of how I did it here. You know, I would add these 4 or 5 topics on the top, and then I would go down and put, like, under the staff training and so on, that's a personnel development area, you know, so that's a PD category there. And the one below it is a PD category. Over here, there's one about technology, that's a T category, you know. So all of those really fall under those 4 or 5 generic groups, and then, you know, there may be some that are both, you know, to be truthful. But, you know, I mean, again, that's something that, you know, I think that we could then utilize this, which you give it a lot of thought to, and can see how it turns into this. That's your vision, and now we're trying to blend it to the level that we want to look at it as, of these 5 basic categories with these supplements, these steps along the way. So I would parenthetically put in, you know, how does that fall under one of those categories? And if it doesn't fall, if there's one in here that doesn't fall, that again would be then maybe an elimination, you know, so.
I think is the confusion that you were thinking that you had our goals by the summaries under each heading that's already here. So one would be develop, maintain effective systems of support, blah, 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 and then there's the list of them. Were you thinking each one of their goals?
No, I guess I am thinking that your plan of work encompasses the strategies that are here. I think what I've heard tonight is that of the areas that are on this chart, I put a star by, I think, some of the items that you highlighted as important for you to see kind of that next level of strategy or detail immediately. What are we doing this year? I heard professional development. I heard some interest in exploring alternate sources of revenue. I heard interest in technology, the master facilities plan, or anything about Jefferson or early childhood. So that's one I guess I do want to circle back to. But I can do it either way. But my thought would be, if those are the areas that you've prioritized, let us develop the next level of detail around those areas. We'll prioritize those areas from within the chart rather than sort of rework the categories within here.
I would just add, with respect to the master facilities plan, I would think that it would have to address what the community has identified as something that is a New Jefferson Early Childhood Learning Center, because that would be within the comprehensive master facilities plan that would be developed. So that the community could get a sense of, all right, if we're gonna support a new early childhood learning development center, what else may you be asking of us to support financially in addition to that? And that would be part of a comprehensive plan. That's just me speaking, but that's what I thought I heard.
Yeah, let me touch on the facility plan, because that was my number 3.
I beat you to it.
Yeah, well, you can have it. But I got a feeling. So I guess thinking about Engage 200 and knowing that the future of Jefferson was I think we still believe is our #1 facility issue, but we haven't talked about it in about 17 months. I agree that for us to develop a comprehensive facilities plan, it has to be Jefferson, or whatever we do with Jefferson, whatever the plan is, has to be embedded within a comprehensive plan. So, I agree with you guys in terms of we have a plan, we have a great spreadsheet. I don't think it's a plan. And I say that for 2 reasons. One, when we were at Warrenville South High School at a meeting, and I made the comment that list of needs focuses more on physical infrastructure, energy-related issues, deferred maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of the buildings. It doesn't address how well our schools and spaces align with the vision of curriculum and instruction and technology. I think that's the other part, I mean, when I talk to my school district clients about that, those are the 2 big nuggets. So I don't think the list of needs that we've created addresses where we're going for 21st century learning, how do we support curricular programming, what is the solution that we want to propose for Jefferson. So I think there's a big task, a big goal for this year, and might even go into next year, to create a comprehensive facility master plan, which has a lot of what we have right now in that spreadsheet is part of that plan. The other reason that I think we need to do with that plan is we need to put, okay, so in 2016, we're gonna do this work, and we're gonna budget this much money. In 2017, we're gonna do this work and budget this much money. Not go into every year and say, this is what we can afford, which items we're gonna pull out. That's not a plan, that's responding to financial circumstances. So I think there's a huge task, and that was my 3rd goal for the year, is kind of taking those 2 points and developing a comprehensive plan. So for me, it's professional development, technology, and facility master plan. And I didn't take any of these things as proposed goals. Like these commitments, these are not goals for this, these are goals forever. Right. We're always going to strive to increase student learning and math by 20%. That's something we just do every day. Well, we do every day. So I didn't take any of these commitments as goals, or any of these 24 items, but I interpreted this sheet as what are we going to pull out and focus on this year to help us accomplish that commitment.
Is that in line with what you were thinking?
Yeah.
Pretty much, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, go ahead.
No, I was gonna, I mean, again, I think anything that is on this chart, again, I want to remind you that is based on feedback that was fed from some level of goal document that either is in existence or feedback that we got, through the community, through that engagement process. So, yes, I think what I heard out of the conversation tonight is you identified some areas around which you would like for us to bring kind of that more detailed goal plan for this year to say, or, and a couple of those even, it's going to be a multi-year plan to address some of those pieces. So I think that would be the next step, would be for us to bring that next level of detail around the areas that you've identified.
Okay, and I wanted to also make sure, I have some feedback here from Mrs. Swanson that I wanted to make sure got it fed into the vision document. So is this, let me ask this, is the vision document then going to be something that we will use for public consumption? Is that the plan, would be to,
Yeah, I would certainly hope so.
okay, yes, I have. Okay, then there's a few things that Mrs. Swanson has suggested that I'd like to run by my fellow board members as well as the staff. She said the community engagement commitment is the only one without verbiage tying it to student learning. And she suggested our commitment is to stay connected with our community to determine its priorities and foster partnerships that enhance student learning and support. It's a little bit more specific and tied to that. So if there's no objection, I think if we could ask you to kind of put that in there. Anybody want to pick over that? Okay. The other thing that she said is that technology doesn't seem to have the same obvious emphasis that came out of the Engage 200 sessions. And that's evident in current district and contract goals. So she recommends changing the facilities header to facilities and technology. Now, I know that technology is part of facilities, and we all know and understand that, but I think maybe that we could do that to emphasize facilities. I mean, technology.
Yeah, I think I agree, but I think technology also has to do with student achievement. I think the two come together.
Right.
I mean, you could link technology to every piece of this. Maybe adjusting the third bullet point under facilities to address not just the infrastructure, but the use of technology, or incorporating it into the plan might work. Whether it needs to be a heading, I don't know, but if we want it to be a heading, that's fine.
I think it's fine.
I mean, technology is in here 3 times.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it is, and really your focus of your work over the last couple of years has really been more in the infrastructure side of technology, trying to build the infrastructure to ready you now for the student learning connection, which is the kind of the devices, right, the way that you can use them to guide that. I would hate, that would be my only concern. I've read the feedback from Mrs. Swanson, and I would hate to pigeonhole technology by connecting it only to facilities, because I think that kind of shortchanges a use, and that's, I think a greater need is in the way technology is connecting to student learning now.
She's not here to rebut.
No, I mean, you know, that's why I'm looking to the rest of you. She had a suggestion about labeling support systems to student and staff supports. I don't know, I'm okay with it the way it is. She just thought that staff quality retention is of specific importance to the board and community, but the header seems a bit vague. So, I don't know.
I defer to the superintendent.
I
Say
will
if
too.
you're not here, you
Okay.
can't.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, all right. And then here's her feedback on goals. I think her goals are right on with what we've discussed. Facilities, the plan timeline to resolve Jefferson, so that's, we've already talked about that, so I think we've got that in there. Community engagement, how can we continue a good community engagement process the way we have started and what we did last year? How can we keep that momentum going and
October 29th and November 13th. Those are 2 examples of continuing the community engagement process. I mean, that's, in my mind, a direct extension of the Engage 200 process.
the discussions around SB 16 meeting? Okay.
We did. I have another answer. There's so many red lights on.
No, I didn't press one.
I think in the process of developing a facility plan, there's a lot of community engagement.
Okay.
It's different than we've done in the past. So the way I'm envisioning the plan and the way I've done it, it's gonna be a big part of that
Okay.
solution to
So
the
community
process.
involvement.
I feel the same way about the whole financial area. You know, I have an advanced copy of the auditor, and included in there is a thing called the management discussion letter. that Bill writes. And, you know, it talks about some real key things that the focuses of the district in the future. And one of them is state funding. Another is negotiations that are coming up. Another is the benefit costs and affordable health care, the pension shift, capital projects, we talk about technology. Those are all key items, as Bill has written in his management discussion letter, on the finances of the district. You know, and those really, I mean, if we tweak those in there, I mean, those are, you know, going to be critical to achieving any of these other ones. So, you know, I mean, I could say the negotiations are a part of, you know, continue to review, negotiate all contracts, maximum quantity, and so on. But, you know, I think, again, if we start getting specific, as Rosemary's doing here, we're walking down a path of, you know, we could go on forever. And so I just think that, you know, that's nice, you know, but, you know, without getting a clarification of it, I think we communicated what we're looking for here a bit, and, you know, the challenges that we'll have in getting there. So, those are my thoughts.
Well, I think, you know, I think Rosemary's thinking is in line with the way we've done things in the past, where we've tried to set concrete goals, we've tried to give the staff direction, and even along those lines, she does suggest that, you know, we know the WWA contract is coming up, and why not make it a goal to get that all resolved, you know, to have that fit in. I mean, we know that that's a goal and an aim for us, but we probably should somehow.
That's not a goal, that's going to be a fact. I mean, that's,
I know,
we don't have
I
any
know.
choice.
Well,
It's not a goal.
it's a goal because it certainly could not come to resolution, so,
We have a goal of resolving the result,
yes, of settling it.
opening the doors
Resolving
next
it.
year. Let's
Yeah.
say that.
Um,
Communication, I just have
sure.
I also, on communication, our website really addresses what we call day-to-day district issues. And I don't see, I'd like to get Erica's feedback, not tonight, but sometime, on whether we should have a board webpage where people can give us feedback on strategic items, on master facilities plan, on broad financial issues, rather than what may be going on day-to-day at a building, or some of the student policies that we have. And so I wonder if that may enhance communication if we had a website for the board or some sort of page for the board.
We do have a dedicated section of the website for the Board of Education that we can certainly review and take a look at.
And that gives us, you know, the board members and the vision statement and the policy statement, but is there a way for the community to communicate on board level issues? That's what,
Like a blog?
or something.
Well, they can email the board. They have a facility to email the board.
A page that gives the board's position on certain items. I think there's a lot of information on our webpage about what's going on in the buildings, what's going on in the district. But with respect to strategic goals, items that only came out in the Engage 200 process, and the feedback there, why should we wait to have an Engage 200 meeting? Why can't people come up with these ideas and feed them to the board directly so that, I know that people can email us, but I think there might be some benefit to have a page where the board puts forth certain positions and goals.
And then ask for feedback,
Right.
say, you know, here's our position on this. If you want to respond, or if you have any ideas for us,
Right.
do this, that kind of thing.
I only throw that out as an idea.
Certainly, and one of the things that I've been working on with Dr. Schuler in my communication plan for this year is enhancing and increasing the communications from the board. So, for example, this was the first written document, kind of hard copy, from the Board of Education. And so, within the next couple of weeks, we are working on separate email templates that communications will have a unique appearance and a unique narrative where it takes a position maybe on how the board voted on something or something in particular that the board would like to directly communicate with the community. Certainly, the only way to communicate from the board is not just through written format. So we do have kind of that one-way communication available on our website. we do have that one-way communication that I just mentioned. But I think that, you know, these Engage 200 sessions are supported and hosted by the Board of Education. So there is your kind of key two-way communication process there. So definitely it's something that we are paying very close attention to, enhancing and increasing those communications directly from the board to the community.
Thank you.
I like, you know, an example that I could come up right like that is the thought on SB 16. You know, that we have a section in the board talking about our position on that, how critical it is, how impacting it would be, etc. And then, as you know, we also get these emails to the board, some of which are, you know, warrant further response or discussion. You know, that we would include that maybe on a section like that too. That would be informative to all. And so I like that idea. So.
Thank you, Jim, that's exactly what
And how about, throwing out ideas, but like a call to action of, we need specific, instead of just always being informative, saying we need you, we need volunteers for this, or anybody, I just keep thinking of the Foundation 200, or fundraising, or, I mean, there's such an array of wealth of businesses out there, or somebody that knows somebody, or willing, they just need to be asked, or don't know our needs, so maybe just list it.
One of the other things that Mrs. Swanson kind of mentioned along these lines, and this may be the time for us to start this. You know, we used to have community kind of advisory groups. And is that a way, having advisory groups, let's say on facilities or on finance, having a community advisory group, is that a good way to keep the community connected with issues that are hot that are going on right now? I don't know what your thoughts might be in getting something like that going either this year or maybe that's a next year thing after you've had a chance to be here a little bit longer. But, you know, to me, that's a double, it's got two good possibilities. First of all, it informs the community of what issues you're facing, and secondly, it gets their input on how they would solve them, and that would give good input to then the board committees. And I've gotten some ideas along the way on how to maybe find people for those committees. That would also be a good ambassador kind of program for the district. So I don't know if you have any thoughts along those lines for community engagement, ongoing community engagement?
To be honest, I think I would struggle with that as a goal for this year. And part of that is that it's just two things that I want to better understand. If it's a board advisory committee, it's really the board that I think would really need to think through the function that advisory committee would serve relative to the decision-making authority that you have. And then I think, you know, that we could probably have some discussion around that. I don't think that's a bad concept to think through. I don't know that that's a this year goal. I just think we're at a time in the year that I think if you're going to consider developing an advisory committee, you know, that's something you really look at from the onset of a year, not kind of mid-November. I think your plate, our plate is full enough.
I feel very strongly, until we know what financial issues we have to deal with, that, you know, we cannot create the potential of expectations that cannot be funded. And I'm a little bit concerned about that when we write in our documents, Engage 200, we say that it's important to note and understand that funding for the following recommendations is not currently available. And that, you know, I don't want to, you know, have a committee come up with, or a citizens group come up with something if it's going to be guidance related. that we can't achieve or fund or whatever, or we're gonna be going the opposite way because of the funding. You know, so I feel very leery of creating those kind of groups. And we don't even know where we're at next year. I mean, you know, there's so many things hanging out there. It's really difficult to do that. So if we have goals and objectives, you know, let's talk about Engage to, or New 200 Foundation. You know, to me, that's an effective group that's gonna try and raise awareness of funding. And that, you know, that's what they can do, that's great. But, you know, to come up with a committee on, you know, class size or, you know, whatever, you know, that we can't fund, that's not a good program. So I'd be really reluctant to proceed at this time.
I kind of disagree.
Come to go first.
And this is the basis of my thoughts on professional development, technology, and facilities. I think you need to have the plan and see what the need is and the desire and the vision is, so you can communicate to every stakeholder. This is what we're going to want to do as a school district. We want to move forward. Here's our plan. We need support.
You know, I don't disagree with your comment, but again, if you have a committee that you're looking for recommendations from, that's different than a communication. And what you're describing is a communication. And to me, that's very, very different. If I come up with a group and I say, this is what we're trying to achieve, and we have no funding ability to achieve it, that to me is misleading. If our objective is to have chats with the board and, you know, expand that into a more formal event and communicate, you know, that's fine. But I just think if we're looking for action or decision-making authority versus communication, that's troublesome.
Yeah, I think if we've landed on 4 goals tonight, or 3 goals, which I think we need to kind of wrap it up and figure out where we are, because this could go on forever. And then you and your staff can bring those action items to us. I mean, to your point, your plate's full, our plate's full, we're, you know, 2 months into the school year. I think if we can just land on 3 goals and let you take those back and apply an action plan to those and then start communicating that to the public via the web or whatever the instrument of communication is, I think that's a big accomplishment and plenty for the balance of the fiscal year or the school year.
Okay, unless there's, Mr. Paulson, go ahead.
These are very small comments, and we don't need to discuss it, just observation about this thing, which will have a life of its own. I think the order is wrong, so I would like to look at maybe putting student achievement first,
Absolutely.
finance second, support systems third, et cetera. And then, since Jim focused on a word up there, I want to focus on one word too, again, just for consideration. Under finance, I don't think you can ensure both maximum quality and lowest cost. I think we need to ensure a balance of maximum quality and lowest cost. So, that's just my picking on one word, but since it says it, we've heard it 1,000 times.
I hope your one word.
You can decide whether it's appropriate or not.
I hope your one word has more success than mine.
What, I think this is a living, breathing document, and so words on this document are easier to change than words on that document, Jim. So have at it, you know, on this one too. Okay, so if I'm hearing right, then we're expecting the superintendent to kind of put together goals on the key areas of professional development, technology, comprehensive facilities plan, and finance in terms of alternative sources of funding. Is that the 4 that we all have kind of written down?
I don't know that I'd be that specific in finance particularly. I mean, alternative forms of funding may be one choice. I don't think that covers the other sides, the reaction of what, you know, so I wouldn't add that statement. I think the point was, you know, the best we can do with the dollars available. You know.
Oh, no, but we had the discussion before about making sure that we're going after the right grants, that's what I was referring to, not what
That's a little
Brandon said.
specific in my opinion, but that's okay.
Well, the topic,
The topic.
About finance, yeah.
Yeah.
no more than 4.
Yeah.
Okay,
Year is half over.
and then my expectation is, and tell me if I'm kind of off base on this, but, so those will be district goals that then the board will vote on and adopt. And essentially they'll pertain to the whole district, so there'll be responsibilities in your court, and obviously the staff reporting to you, And then anything that the board needs to do to support those goals, we need to own those and we need to do as well. So, so we won't have separate board goals, so to speak, it sounds like. It sounds like that's kind of confusing, you know, for people to deal with. But we will have then our role to perform within the goals that we are setting now. Okay? Does that, because I don't think we should view this as getting us off the hook from doing anything that we need to do to support the staff and what's being done in the district.
Yeah, I don't anticipate though in the plan that I will bring to you that you will see specific board action steps. I think you can see action steps clearly if I think the board sees in improving that specific strategy we need to employ through your goals of board. That's I think a discussion you could have. But I anticipate what we will bring to you is an action plan around those items that we've developed that is really gonna focus much more on the administrative plan.
Maybe I'd like to see in the reports when we do the board meetings is, you know, what category or what group or what goal or whatever you want to call it. You know, this is a discussion or an action item related to, you know, and then maybe kind of tie it in that way a bit as well.
And then in community engagement even, I mean, I would think there would be a role for board members to play in terms of, you know, being more accessible in the community, maybe getting invited to chamber events to go with staff, you know, something like that, because we're here to maintain the goodwill of the district. So I think there will be opportunities for us to participate, and I would expect to have some expectations of us. So I don't think we should be off the hook. There was one other thing that came to mind that now I lost the thought, so. It happens.
Just since we're wordsmithing, and if this is gonna be a public document, I think we have to be careful with the word. I'm under community engagement, and the first bullet point under we will. I'm a little concerned about the word implement, because all the items in, not all, but many of the items in community, the input we got from Engage 200 is about finances. I mean, we're gonna need money to do those things, and I think that maybe the better word is consideration. I mean, I know I'm, again, wordsmithing, but once you say we're gonna develop and implement, that's a pretty bold statement, because we may not be able to keep that commitment. So just, I don't like the word for that reason. Maybe develop and consider recommendations, or so maybe a softer word that's not as specific as that, for me anyway.
How about strive to implement?
Anyway, just as long as we're not put in a box.
The charge to the Engage 200 committee was to come up with recommendations, and they knew that they were not binding recommendations.
But I think strive to implement
I think
is stronger than
I'm good.
consider.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so then at the next meeting, we'll have something to essentially approve for our board goals. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask. The committees that we have set up then, we have we have 2 or 3 standing committees. We have a facilities committee. I'm sorry.
Three.
Right, we have 3 standing committees. Finance, facilities, and teaching and learning. So do those committees, board committees, still make sense then with this goal structure?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would wonder is, you have 3 of the 5 commitment areas covered. Would it make sense for the board if the work that's gonna be done likely over the next 4 years is gonna correspond to one of these 5 areas? Would you want to consider having a standing committee for each of the 5 areas? Some of them may not, need to, to meet significantly, but you've typically have, and you've needed it, a human resource committee that can fall underneath the support systems category. I guess I'm just wondering if you don't want to consider expanding your committee structure so that you have, a committee, attached to each of those areas. You had an ad hoc committee last year around
For
community
community
engagement too, which was Engage 200, and I just don't know that it would be a bad thing to still have that.
Do we have to make that decision tonight, or can you kind of think about that?
The only issue with delaying that decision as to whether or not we have those, we can make it ad hoc committees. We don't have to change anything to make those ad hoc committees and try it for a year and see what happens. I mean, why don't we just decide to do that and then see who volunteers for those other two committees? Because all of us have had representation, except for the teaching and learning committee. I think all of us have been on a variety of different committees. And so, if you would like to have that, if you would like to have our support and our input, we could certainly set up ad hoc committees to supplement those three standing committees. Would you like us to do that?
I think that it might make some sense to, to do that, and I guess again, the two that don't exist now are the support systems, but again, you have had a human resource committee, as you've needed it, and I think that's when you probably will need this year.
With the negotiations.
And then, again, community engagement, you had an ad hoc last year, but I think it may make some sense to ensure at the board level, maybe Barb, to the point that you were just talking about, I think on the community engagement side, that's where there probably is the greatest role or presence of the board in ensuring that, this work is carrying forward, so I don't think it'd be a bad thing for that group to stand this year as well. If we don't use it this year, we don't call any meetings, I guess I'm not assuming the presence of a committee means we're obligated to call a monthly meeting. I think those committees have operated when the committees have needed to meet, so.
When there's something to decide,
If they're not needed, we can change that decision next year, but to me, there's some alignment then in the governance structure and the goal plan.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we, is that okay with, okay, go ahead, Brad.
I believe that having a communications committee at the board level that's not ad hoc or not one-year deal, there's so much of this is about communicating to the public. It's in multiple locations. We've made so many strides through the Engage 200 process, not to have it to have it not be one of our core committees, I think is a mistake. I walked into this with the thought that we should have 4, including a communications committee, communications or engagement committee. So I don't really know how a support systems committee would work, and so I'm not in favor of a communications committee being just an ad hoc committee. I think it needs to be a regular part of what we do at the board table. That's my opinion.
I also think, sorry.
Go ahead.
I also think that we should have the committees mainly to limit the discussion at the board level sometimes. If we had gone through the Engage 200 committee without an ad hoc committee, we would have been here 2 more days than we were here already, So I think, again, I think we get a lot accomplished in subcommittees or committees of the board, and then the board, reports, and then we have the questions. It takes away this kind of little tweaking things and all that. I just think that that's a very effective way to.
And we've certainly appreciated all that we've gotten from you on the finance committee, in that same way, because we've not needed to delve into as much detail, and so I think there's great value to that. My only concern would be, because of this short time frame, and why don't we do those 2 things ad hoc for this year? And then at the end of the year, when we're setting next year's goals, when we're doing it in the spring and starting that discussion in the spring, then with the new board and everything, if we have new board members, then we can maybe make some of those permanent going forward. But if it's okay with you, for this year, we'll leave them ad hoc and go from there.
I'm officially good with that.
You're officially good, okay.
Do you want us to serve on the same board?
Well, what I'll do is I'll get out we'll make sure we have the nomenclature correct, whether we call it human resources or something, or support systems or whatever, or community engagement versus communications. We'll get that nomenclature correct, and then I'll send out an email to all of you saying, what do you want to volunteer for the rest of this year, and then we'll try to make some assignments. That's why I wanted to discuss this tonight. This way, we'll assign committee members at the next board meeting. Okay, because those have to be according to the rules appointed by the president, so I'll do that appointment at the next meeting. Any other questions, any other discussion? This is a rough meeting every year, and throwing this little wrench into things made it a little rougher, but I think we got where we needed to be.
I don't think it being called a wrench, I think it's better than a wrench.
Jeff, I loved your chart.
I
thought it
did
was a
too.
really good work chart.
Yeah.
And, although it got picked up a little bit, overall, I think we all appreciate what you did.
Exactly, yeah, it just, you know.
We'll get that,
something we're not used to. Okay.
collectively that.
Yeah, no, it was great work. Okay. All right, do we have any, do you have any public comments? No. No, there are no public comments for tonight, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Does anybody want to adjourn?
I would like to move that we adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Paulson,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Vroman, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned, thank you very much.
2 seconds.